Hi, thanks for tuning in. I'm Peggy with Peg and Pen, and today I'm going to show you how to paint watercolor roses. So grab your supplies. I will show you what I have and what I'm using, and let's paint together. So the supplies I'm using are my silver black velvet brush. It's a size 6, and what I really like is it's got the nice tip to it, so you can do a nice point when we need to. So I'm using just the size 6 brush. I have 100% cotton paper, and that's 300 GSM, 140 pound, so I have 100% cotton. I'll need a palette to mix my paint, a jar of water, a paper towel, and the paint I'm using today to show it is the, and I don't know if I'm pronouncing it right, Alizarin Crimson from Daniel Smith. And when we're done, we'll go ahead and do a composition. And so with that, for the leaves, I'm going to use the chromium green oxide, again, Daniel Smith. So those are the supplies today. So let's get ready and do some of the basic strokes before we build our rose. We do some of these little tick marks, half circles, and we'll just do small little curves. Thin, thick, just real small ones. And we can go the opposite direction as well. You want to just get used to this, using these small little ones. These are going to be in your center of your rose. So just practice some little small lines that are just slightly bent, so that way you can get used to what would be the center of your rose. And then we're going to do some other touching where it's going to be light, pressure, light. So that was going to look like going to be light, pressure, and light. Light, pressure, light. These are how we do leaves as well, but this also is one of the strokes we do with the roses. Now what you're going to want to do is, once you get that light, pressure, light, add a little curve to it. Light, pressure, light. And we can go the opposite direction. Light, pressure, light. And just start practicing. Get used to the curve. It doesn't need to be perfect, and you can go down and up, from the down to the up. It's just getting used to that stroke. And then you can even build it bigger if you like. So practice that. And then when you're done and you feel like you've got an idea of how this feels and moves with your brush, let's move on to our roses. Okay, we're going to start by making a nice puddle of paint on my palette. And so it's a nice consistency. I like to have a nice amount going so I don't have to keep mixing, keeping the consistency all together. So we've got our puddle of paint, and I've dipped my brush, and let's get painting. The way I start with my roses, and you've probably seen this if you've ever done a rose before, is I make just small little half circles, C curves, commas. They're referred to in a lot of different ways. So, and I'm left-handed, so you can just do the opposite of this. You can do it either direction, but just small little, let me zoom in a little bit so you can see. Just small little curves, just so you can be in the center. So just nice small little couple curves around each other, just to kind of form that center intense circle. And those are usually mostly with the tip. And then once we've done that, I'll reload my brush a little bit, and then you start expanding out your petals, because this is the tight center, and then it gets looser and looser as you build out. So now that I have these tiny little half circles, I'm going to now apply a little pressure. So I'm going to push down, apply some pressure, sweep my brush around, and then pull back up again. And they don't need to be perfect. They can be wobbly. They can be a little wonky. That's okay, because in nature, that's the way our flowers are. And then for the next one, I'm not just going to continue right in a row. You kind of want to overlap a little bit and change it up a little bit. So I'm push down and then come back up a little bit. And again, I start with the light tip, push down, and come back up. I'm going to grab a little more paint, and you just keep expanding. And as you build out, you add a little bit more pressure and longer. So your petals are getting bigger and bigger as you go along. And that's how you're going to expand the rows. Now the key, you also want to leave some of this white space. You don't want it all running into each other. If that's the case, then you're just going to have one big puddle of pretty paint, which is fine if that's what you're looking for, but we want some definition. We want to see the leaves. We want that different look involved in a flower and all your petals. So this is a very nice structured rose I've just went ahead and painted. So there we go. There's a very structured rose. Some more ways of doing it. Let's try it again. We're going to start with just the small little half circles, little tick marks almost. And then you start building out. And kind of dropping the side of your brush so it thickens up and gives you some real big, wider strokes. And then what you can do is, once you've got your base there, get your brush a little damp and then tap it off on your towel and come back and expand on those. So it softens up those edges a little bit. We're still keeping the same thing that we've been doing, the little wide and then thin, but it's just softening up the edges. And then I'm going to build out from there. I'll just dip in, gets a little bit more water, and build out. And I'll be honest, when I do my roses, I do them pretty quickly. I don't take too much time. So there we go. That kind of gives it a little bit of a softer edge as you build out. It just softens up your petals. Gives you just a nice sense of just loose rose. And then I'll add a little extra sweeps around. So there you go. There's another rose for you. To continue, this is looking straight down. These are looking straight down on a rose, so I'm not doing really any angle. Once this is dried a little bit, one nice thing you can do is go back with a deep color, the same color, and then just fill in a little bit. Kind of go back over your strokes just to give a little bit more depth right in the center. So when that dries, it'll give it a lot more definition. So we can go back to even this one here. See how the middle is pretty fair? And so I'm going to go ahead and add some darker color just in the center to help give it a little bit more depth. All right. Now we don't want our roses all facing like they're looking straight up at us. We want to have some character. So it's the same process. I still do my little tick marks in the center here. But if I want my rose as though I'm looking from it from this angle looking in, I'm going to build up on this side, the lower side, a little more. So I still want a rounded center, but now I'm going to really make this bottom section a lot bigger. See, I'm going to leave the top now a little bit and now really expand down below. And just kind of lighten up the top. But this way, and then I'm going to add a little extra water to help loosen this up a little bit. but now it looks like we're looking at it from the angle. So we're kind of looking up and at it. So that gives you a little bit of a different angle for your flower. And then one other type of flower we can do is kind of more of a real loose. So same thing, we're just going to go ahead and start with these little tick marks. And then just do more of a upright. It's almost a peony in a sense, but it's definitely a rose, where you're just going to really have some loose open petals. Or you can bring them down. And now your rose looks like it's really open and blooming, and we're looking at it from a side. So that's a real pretty way of doing it too. And again, this other one, I'm going to go back to the one that we're looking at the side. Now it's dried just slightly. I'm going to add just a little bit more color on the inside, right in the middle, just to give it a little bit more depth. So there we go. There's that. We also want to do some buds, because buds are always fun, and especially if you're going to do a bouquet, you need some buds in your bouquet. So the way I do my buds, it's the same kind of idea with the little ticks, but more in just a circle. Really build them up. So now I've got a circle, and then on one side I'm going to sweep down, and then on the other sweep as well. And now I have a little bud. That's one way. That's kind of more looking at it. And now let's just show you a couple different ways that we can do these. Just some circles, messy circles. That's okay. And then we bring them down. And I always try to have one side a little bigger, and then the other is a little skinnier. And then when we add some green leaves, that will really show the difference. Let me just add real quick. When you add some stem, what a difference that makes. And then you can add just a little bit of. And now you have your rose and your rosebud. And then what I do, once those dry up a little bit more, same thing with the centers of the roses, I like to come back and kind of define the petal and how it's folding over each other. And since I'm left-handed, I tend to go this side. So that gives it a little bit more of a defined petal folding over itself, and then you can add a little bit more in the centers. And I just think that adds such a nice touch to it. So now that we've practiced some roses, go ahead and practice some more. It takes a lot of practice. I've been doing these for quite some time, and I still feel like I'm still trying to perfect them a little bit, but keep at it, and let's paint a bouquet. So now we know how to make a few roses. Let's put them all together and make a bouquet. I have my sheet of paper here. Sometimes I'll just put some very faint pencil lines of where I want things to go. Mostly I just paint. Just let it go, let it fall into place. If you're more comfortable with drawing some outlines or just some dots, locations where you want your roses to be, and then erase it so it's just very, very faint so you can barely see it, feel free. Work with what is best for you. If that's what you want to do, go for it. I tend to just paint on the page and fill it as I go, usually. So here we go. And that's what I'm going to do today. I'm just going to start. So what I've done is I've gone ahead and, filled my brush with a lot of my color. And I'm going to start on one side and just start building my rose. So I've got my little shapes. And like I said, I work kind of fast. I don't take too much time. I think the more I think about it, it doesn't turn out as well. So I'm just going to go ahead and just build my rose, as you can see, and just keep adding layers. This one's kind of looking straight at us. Adding a little bit of water to lighten up the edges. So here's just kind of a nice loose, and again, you don't want your rose to be perfect circles either. How often do we ever see a perfect circle shaped rose like that? Rarely. So here's one. I'm going to do another one, and I'll turn my page. Do what works for you. Put one over here on the side so it's more of a side angle. So as you see, I'm not real particular. I just work pretty fast. And it's okay if your roses blend into each other. That's all right. Add a little more thickness here to make so you can really see that that's where it's off to the side. And then here's a little more. I'm going to add some darker color in there. I'm going to add just a little bit more on the edges just to accentuate a little bit more. Kind of fluff it up a little. I'm going to do another one right in this area here. I think I'm going to do one with those fun loose leaves, the petals that are kind of sticking out a little bit. So let's see how this goes. And try to really thicken up these side petals. And then add some real bright, deeper color in the center here. Now, of course, we want to add some buds. So I'm going to have a few little buds. One up at the top here. And then I think another one right over here. So there's our composition, mostly of the roses. Now we need to add some stems and some leaves because otherwise they just look like they're a bunch of floating roses. So I'm going to start with this middle one, and I'm using the green. I'm just going to kind of let that go in, and if it bleeds, that's great. I think it looks beautiful that way. And I just kind of let it go. And let's just kind of, I like to squiggle. So there's a leaf. I think I want some coming out. Probably the top here. And we can do that pressure and release, some very classic leaves. And I always like to usually put two leaves together, at least. And then sometimes I just do some little extra stems. And we need something over on this side. I'm going to turn just to make it a little easier for me. Just for the direction that being a lefty. Leaving a little white space is always good. It defines that center. And I'm only using the one color of green just to make it real simple today. And I just always like to add just little extra stems. I think that looks nice. Now with our buds, adding just some extra. And then what I like to do is add some greenery coming up, because I think so many buds of roses have that little extra greenery. And then what you can do is just add some extra stems coming down to make it look like you've got a real bouquet going on. And I think to fill in, I need another leaf in this area, even though I've got that stem. I think we need, and I haven't mentioned, but you can, when you change some of the, with using one color green, you can certainly use a more intense color, so it'll vary, and it looks like you now have more than just one color of green being used by actually adding some real dark right from the container green. So there we go, just a real quick, simple. You've used the principles that I showed you on how to paint roses, and now we've just made our own pretty red rose bouquet. So hopefully that gives you some help and new ideas, and some new ways to maybe approach your roses. Thanks for joining me in learning how to paint roses today. Hopefully you learned a new skill or a new idea or a new way to approach your roses. The biggest thing that I do is I don't take too much time. I just go. I paint them fairly quickly. I'm overall a pretty fast painter anyway, so have some fun with it. Let them bleed, let them just be imperfect, because that's how a rose really looks in real life anyway. So have fun. Thank you for joining me, and we'll see you next time.